Well, good morning. How are you today? Hope you're enjoying your morning. Today we're going to chat about something that may not be popular, but that's something I think very important for all of us to take and consider. According to Scripture, there is a pleasure in sin, but the end is destructive. And there was a man who was king named David. He was doing well. He was blessed of God, loved God. God loved him. And there was this challenge that he went to for many years, being chased by King Saul. And David behaved himself wisely and honorably with God in that trial. And, he eventually becomes king when Saul dies. And so David's doing well. The people love him. Things are working well. And it's the time to go to war. It says in the scripture, it was the time for kings to go to war. Well, in those days, a lot of different reasons for war. There always has been. But, somebody's encroached on the borders, maybe, and you had to go push them back. And some were just trying to see how far they could get away with things and maybe attack. And you didn't always fight battles, in the wintertime because it wasn't always conducive to a very victorious coming together with all the different weather patterns and cold and so on and so forth. So there was a season, there was a special time that the kings on the good side and the bad side, depending on whose side you're on, we're on David's side, so they're the bad kings, right? So it was time for them to go to war. And the people said to David, "We love you, David. We don't want anything to happen to you. And if something would happen to you, it'd be a great defeat for all of us. So stay. Don't go to war." Well, the problem with that is God had appointed David king, and with being a king came certain responsibilities, and one of them is to lead the armies. One of them is to rule and make judgments and discern what's going on and care for the people. So there's things that come with being king. It's just not, well, I'm king and it's great and I'm just going to kick back and do nothing and everybody else is going to serve me. No, a true king of God serves the people. That's what good leadership does. It serves the people. So David, he yielded to that. He said, "Well, this makes sense, and I'm tired of fighting. I've been fighting since I've been a kid, taking on Goliath." So David doesn't go to war, and one evening from his rooftop, he notices a beautiful woman bathing. Now, at that point, our friend David should have done the wise thing. The scripture says, "You can't take coal into your bosom and not get burned. Flee, run, turn away." But he didn't do that. And so he continued to come back and look. And eventually he decided he wanted to have her and have sexual relations. So he sends for her. He being king, maybe she decided that she didn't have a say. I don't know her heart. We're not told much of hers. We're told more about David. But he's king, and so he asks that she be brought to him. And so they're having an affair. There's pleasure in this season. And then she lets the king know that she's pregnant. And based on the time that her husband's been gone, well, everybody's gonna figure out something bad happened. She's gonna get stoned, and even the king could be stoned because this is God's law that has been broken. And those are the rules in Israel at the time. So David thinks, well, I'll bring her husband back. And brings him back, and he's asking how things are going, and he's trying to get him to go home and spend the night with his wife, so that hey, a couple of weeks here and there difference. It's hard to tell sometimes. So, but he's just not one of those kind of guys. He says that my brethren are out there, and they don't have the comfort of their own bed and their wife, and I'm not going to dishonor them. I've got this time at the king's table. And David tries again, gets him drunk, tries to get him to go home, but he doesn't. So Uriah's going to know that something's gone wrong when he finds out that Bathsheba's pregnant, right? So David tells his general, who's merciless, that send him into the heat of the battle, and in the midst of it, pull everybody back and let him die. Wow. Think about that. Adultery, murder. Wow. This is a man after God's own heart. People, we all can fail. If we're not going to be close to the Lord, or we're not going to follow his advice, if we're going to put our hands to the stove, you're going to get burned. You pick up the coal and bring it to your bosom, it's going to burn you, and that's lust. I mean, you don't want to hold on to it. You want to turn from it, go to God and ask for cleansing and keeping yourself pure. But this season was blessed in emotion and feelings and all the good sensuality, but it didn't get God's approval. It didn't have that kind of blessing. So the prophet shows up and says, I want to tell you a story, O king. Live forever. There was a man who only had one sheep, and it was precious to his family. They loved that little lamb. And this rich man who had lots of lambs and could buy any lamb that he wanted chose to take that lamb from that man, and then he killed that man. And David said, that man shall surely die. He shall be put to death for such a grievous crime. And the prophet bows his head and says, O king, live forever, but thou art that man. And David knew then that message was about him and his dealings of adultery and murder. David was willing to be put to death for his sin. Had a repentant heart. The prophet said, you shall not die, but you're going to suffer consequences for your actions. You're going to see your own bed destroyed. And the blood and the sword is never going to leave your house. And that's true. All through the history, there was bloodshed and problems and the sword, right up to Messiah, the lineage of David, Jesus of Nazareth, suffered the blood and death. It may seem like nobody's watching. It may seem like it's just too enticing and too good, whatever it is that is going to cause you to violate the principles of God's law. Those laws weren't put down to take away our fun in life. They were placed there to keep us safe, to tell us this is the reality of life. Keep God first. You don't want demonic forces in your life by turning to other gods. And you don't lie. You should not wear yourself out. You should rest on the Sabbath. You shouldn't kill people. You shouldn't steal. You shouldn't want what your neighbor has. Those are great. Those keep us in harmony with God, with ourselves, and with others. And Jesus said, I've come to fulfill the law. And again, we are fulfillers of the law. We're not trying to do the law to be saved. And we're not dotting every I and crossing every T of the law. We fulfill the law broadly by our love for God and loving others as we would ourselves. So in that, you can't say David loved God because he chose this woman over God, and he wasn't loving to his neighbor, and especially when it came to killing and murdering him. So these laws, these things God gives us are for our benefit, to have a good life and to keep from having problems brought upon generations. It doesn't stop with us. Adam and Eve sinned, and all of humanity fell with them. There's a lot of people whose lives have been destroyed because of the sins of the forefathers. God's not holding those people accountable, but their forefathers put things in motion that brought poverty, curses, other things down the line. As a believer, we can go to the Lord and ask for that forgiveness, confess the faults of our forefathers, and we're free, we're not condemned. But sometimes circumstances and situations are put in order. Ultimately, the child died from that wrong conception. It was very painful for David and Bathsheba to lose the child, but God couldn't bless the child. because of their sin. Didn't want the child to reap the bad things that came from their actions. So sometimes it doesn't seem like God's being very nice, but really He's trying to protect us. He would have Israel wipe out enemies that were so full of sexually transmitted diseases that He didn't want that invading them nor other places. That sounds like that's bad, but back in the day, that was the best quarantine measures that could be taken. I want to encourage you, don't give in to those moments. You've got a lifetime to live with the blessings of God in eternity. Don't sell yourself short. Don't take a cheap imitation of what you think is good. Go for what God says is His blessing. And you and your house and others will be grateful for your obedience and honor to God in times to come. This is Pastor Dan. Have a good day.